Hi, welcome. This is a review of Inferno by Dante. I don't know if I'm really going to review it, but I'm just going to talk about it for a little bit, so I guess you can count it as a review. So basically, it's a 13th century epic poem by the Italian poet Dante, and this is the Robin Kirkpatrick translation, and I'm just going to be talking about Inferno. So basically, it's if you don't know, it's essentially a depiction of hell, like a late medieval depiction of hell, and mostly it's just Dante showing how there's it's part of the I believe it's just called Commedia, but people call it the Divine Comedy. The divine part came later, but essentially comedy's used in the old, old sense of the word comedy, where everything sort of turns out for the better. It's not meant to be funny, but it's the idea that there's everything turns out as it just and should be. I'm not saying that that's really what this book's like at all, but that's kind of the overarching theme of Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, which are the three. Obviously, Inferno is about hell, Purgatorio is about purgatory, and Paradiso is about heaven. So Dante goes on a little journey, and you could make the argument that Inferno is a very early isekai, because essentially Dante living just gets sent by God to visit hell. And and one of the things about Inferno is how heavily referenced it is in literature and media. It's one of those works that when you read it, it's like realizing how much references it. Other works that do have this effect on people, or this effect on me, is like the ancient Greek poems by Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, when you realize how much of Western media and just alludes to it, it's kind of crazy. And Inferno is similar. So basically there's 9 circles, but if you actually look at the schema in this book, it's not divided into, it's sort of divided into 9, but the last 3 circles aren't necessarily explicitly referred to as circles, and they're subdivided as well. So it's not as clear cut as there's 9 circles of hell. And also this book is very spicy. Some of the content in this will definitely offend people. I don't want to go too much into detail. It's just best to have a vague content warning for this book. It is quite spicy. But yeah, there's a lot of really bodily imagery. Dante is very he's quite learned, and definitely refers to different parts of the body and very visceral bodily descriptions of things. A lot of it is him just talking to different people, and most of them are just political opponents, and he's just showing why he doesn't like someone. But it's also very much a commentary on Dante's own political exile from 14th century Florence. So yeah, Florence is the city-state that so Italy at this point, when this epic poem was written, Italy was made out of city-states, or yeah, so like you'd have like Rome, Florence, Venice, Pisa, stuff like that. And it was very much a mercantile state. But if you read the introduction, which I'm partway through, it definitely goes into explaining the historical and context of Dante Alighieri's time, especially in Italy, where there were like sort of like three major like driving forces behind things, but a growing one would be the mercantile influence. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting read. The poetry is like in this copy is like the poetry is honestly like sublime. It's very well written, and very well translated as well. So I do recommend picking up the Penguin Robin Kirkpatrick version. And I fully intend to read the other two of the Commedia. So, yeah, it does also, like, going into a little bit of spoiler territory, it does, like, it shows hell as sort of like a place of torment, but Dante is able to get through hell without, like, any sort of major shenanigans. And he sort of goes through to the other side. So Dante knew the world was round, and he sort of imagined hell as like the interior. But then on the other side, poking through in the Antipodes, which is sort of, you know, where New Zealand and Oceania is, then that was, or he wouldn't have known that at the time because obviously the world was unexplored, but that was seen as where the mountain of purgatory is, which leads into the second, like epic poem. And yeah, it's, I don't know if he was exactly offering like a vision of salvation. I don't know if that was really the intent of this book, I think. But he does, like, it's not like a one-way street, so to say. But yeah, things do get progressively worse, although sometimes worse is worse by, like, 13th century standards. Sometimes the punishment is more metaphorical than actual, like, literal badness. Yeah, there's a lot of, like, recognizable symbolism. Like, for example, at the bottom of hell, it's frozen. Everything's frozen over. You know, you get the expression, like, when hell freezes over, you know, sort of alluding to this. I don't know if it's specifically alluding to this, but this is very influential, so it's quite likely. Yeah, I recommend Inferno, and to talk about the poetry. I've already talked about how there's a lot of like bodily imagery. It's very. It also has like an interesting meter. So Dante essentially invented a rhyming meter where it's all about threes. He really is obsessed with the number 3 in this. So the rhymes are like in sets of threes, and they sort of like interweave. And he also really likes that number 100 because there's 100 cantos in the La Commedia. So yeah, I think I've talked enough about Inferno. I think it is a good poem, and when I finish the introduction and there's a commentary, which will be important because it'll be good to see like a modern perspective on like what he's saying. Like one thing I think about Inferno is you should understand it from like a modern perspective. Like you've got to understand the mindset that Dante was in when he wrote it and the context that was written, because the context is very important for a work like this. But it also, you need to like kind of step back and see it in like a contemporary perspective, you know, like it's a good book for a commentary. And I recommend, like, if you're reading this version, I recommend reading the introduction, because the introduction will illuminate a lot of details that you might miss just reading the poem. But you could read the poem, then read the introduction, which is what I'm doing. That way you don't kind of get spoiled on too much of the details, even though there's a lot of important stuff, like context, to understand about it. And so Dante, Inferno. I think after I finished reading the Divine Comedy, or Commedia, I kind of want to read Homer, the Odyssey, but I'm not sure if I'm going to read the Iliad first and then the Odyssey, or if I'm going to read the Odyssey first. I know it, like, chronologically, the Iliad comes first and then the Odyssey, but I don't know if reading the Iliad is a prerequisite for reading the Odyssey. I don't know because I want to read the Odyssey more than the Iliad, and I don't want to like make too many barriers for myself in order to read the Odyssey. But yeah, that's kind of the thought processes that I have with these old epic poems. And yeah, it's also good to read contemporary poetry, or even like 19th century and 20th century poetry, because you see the development of like poetic ideas. You know, it's easy to get caught in your frame of reference. So yeah, that's Inferno by Dante, plus some extra ramblings. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in another one.